But with Lost, you never got any of that. With Lost, everything's the main character could be wrong or right. It was like real life. You know what I mean? It was more realistic, and then also not realistic, but then realistic on characters. So what's the deal with Richard? So Richard, obviously, he was explained. Literally, they really explained everything about Richard. So Richard ended up on the island. His wife died or something like that. I can't really remember. He wasn't really a character that you have to look out for a lot. But yeah, his mom finger died. He was promised that we'd get to see his wife again, which we know that could have happened because we see in season 6 that Sayid actually dies, or 5, that Sayid actually dies when they're at the temple, and then they dip him into this water, and then he comes back to life. But obviously there's a certain darkness in him when he comes back to life, so he's not himself, he's something different. There's darkness into him, so he could probably have been able to raise Richard's wife from the dead. Richard is the key game here. Richard is the one that made everything happen. Richard is the one that told Ben to kill everyone in the Dharma Initiative, if I'm right. Yeah, that's what he did. He told everyone to he told Ben to do that. Then once they were killed off and they got off the island, because if the Dharma Initiative had stayed on the island, a lot of events would have happened that, us people are weird with our technology. They could have made stuff, build the island, or maybe sell it to someone, and then the Black Smoke could never have left the island, or could have been locked down or something, and the Black Smoke wasn't having that. So he probably told Richard, you know what, tell Ben to kill everyone on the island, each one of the people in the Dharma Initiative. But then Ben, obviously, he thinks is working for Jacob. So I think Richard probably knew all along that he was working for the Black Smoke, and obviously he knew that the Black Smoke wasn't Jacob, except if the Black Smoke told him that he was Jacob. Because I don't think Richard knows how Jacob looked like. Did Richard know how Jacob looked like? I don't think so. So he probably thought, I'm working for Jacob, blah blah blah, and then they all worked for Jacob, but really it was the Black Smoke. Okay, let's talk about Desmond. Now Desmond is my favorite character. Like, when your series was getting interested, and I thought I had seen every character that I like, and then they bring Desmond. Like, I don't know if it's the accent. I love the guy, man. I love his chemistry, his relationship with Penny and everything. But the most interesting thing about Desmond is this fact that he could see the future. He started seeing the future as soon as he had that key into the first hatch to stop it from ending the world. So obviously we see that. That's the reason why. So from that point onwards, when he did that key thing in the hatch to stop it exploding, and then he blew up and everything, he comes out naked, and then Hugo gives him his shirt, and then from that time onwards, he becomes this guy that sees a bit of the future. So the explanation is that the electromagnetism or magnetic whatever stuff was down there kind of affected him in a certain way, the same way they affected John Locke and they cured his legs, the same way they affected Rose and they cured her cancer. It could have done the same thing with Desmond. So Desmond, from that point onwards, he became an important character, because if he can see the future, he's very important, you know what I mean? So yeah, and he was the first character to introduce us to, the writers, I believe, they were trying to bias into the idea of the flash forward, because then in the few more seasons ahead we see the Flash when the flash forwarded, and then we see the time travel as well. So all this obviously was priming us to accept this stuff of when it comes on. That's how Desmond basically got the power of being able to see the future and all this stuff. So now, the other time, obviously, when he's on the plane, the Naomi people, when Naomi's people come to rescue, they claim they came to rescue the people, and then they go off with Desmond in the helicopter. When they pass a certain part, it forgets everything and it starts appearing in two different places at the same time. Again, that's something electromagnetism or magnetic or whatever that explains it. We obviously find out that someone on the ship again as well has the same issue. So the question is also, did Boone have to die? Like, we see Boone died, and then John Locke says that Boone was a sacrifice, but did Boone really have to die? But then we find out that Boone could not let go of his sister being with Sayid. So the island the island had to kill Boone, because even though it was there for Locke, it was going to distract Locke. It was almost like the island had already chosen Locke. It had interest in Locke, and they wanted to make sure that everyone that was with John Locke was pure and was there to help. So I think when the island saw that this guy could not let himself go from the sister, the island said, you know what, I'll kill you. So it kills him. So yeah, that's why he had to die, really. He wasn't going to be helpful in the long term to John Locke. Obviously, the island finds someone else to help John Locke, which is Mr. Echo. Now, Mr. Echo is one of my most interesting characters, man. I was so angry when he died off. Like, so I'm there watching the series. I'm like, did Mr. Echo just die? Because it felt like one of them characters were gonna be throughout the show. But let me tell you a fact. It was actually going to be throughout the whole show. Echo, the guy that plays Echo, Mr. Echo in the series, apparently he was fed up of being on the island when they were shooting the film. He was tired of the sun, the weather in Hawaii where they were shooting the series, Lost. So apparently he said he was leaving after a few episodes. And the writers say up to this day that they really loved writing scripts for Echo because he had this interesting thing about him. Like someone who came from being a drug dealer to this humble guy who believes in stuff that John Locke believes in. Like there was that part where John was down and then he told John Locke that the part that everything they're doing is very important. Like something just possessed him and he felt like he had purpose, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's why they had to kill him off, because the actor, well, he wasn't happy about the place they were shooting, which is kind of sad because I really wanted to see more of Echo. So I think the death of Echo, I can't really go into that because now that I know that they had to kill him off because of that. So it doesn't really, if you watch the show, you know it doesn't make sense when the Black Smoke kills him, because the Black Smoke had seen him before, just as it had seen John Locke, and it hadn't killed him, so there was no point of it killing him again. But the writers had to kill Echo off because it would have been weird if he just goes out without nothing killing him. So yeah, that's why they killed him off. But the island could have killed him because he had done what he was supposed to do. He had managed to encourage John into pursuing a goal, pursuing destiny. Because he told John Locke, we have to do this, we have to do this. You have to make sure those numbers go into the system. If you don't put the numbers, it might be the end of the world. So after he dies, that's when John Locke actually realizes that Mr. Echo was right all along, you know. He was right, and then that kind of pushes John to push on to following destiny, you know. We see the flashback of Mr. Echo going to this girl's house, and the girl had died and then she had come back to life. She had drowned in water and she had come back to life, and she tells Mr. Echo that she had seen Femi. Now we don't know how she had seen Femi. Like that part was really weird, that I don't understand. But the fact that she says she was drowning in water, could it be that the water she was drowning in was the same water that Sayid drowned in and then he came back to life? Could it be that this girl had in fact died and he had come back? But that does not explain why, because that doesn't explain everything, because we know that Black Smoke could not come off the island, so there's no way that Black Smoke could have resurrected her, and there's no way she was off the island. There's no way. That does not explain it. So she was the reason that Mr. Echo ended up on the island. So there is an explanation to that, which the writers obviously don't give us because they're selfish piece of shits. I think she probably died. She probably died on the island, and then she was put into this water, and then she woke up. They put some injection in her. They took her off the island, and then they brought her back home, and then she wakes up thinking that she was actually in this hospital, blah blah blah. But really, she was taken off the island, killed, and then the Black Smoke brought her back up, and then the Black Smoke told her that tell Mr. Echo to come Yemi, blah blah. Then the island appeared to her in form of Yemi, saying that I'm Yemi, go tell Echo to come here, blah blah blah. And I think that explains it. That could be a scenario. I know that does not sound realistic at all, but it could be, you know, anything can be an explanation, you know, right? Okay, so let's talk about the ending. Desmond. Why was Desmond meeting everyone and then linking them together towards this final ending, and then we see them obviously going to through the gates of heaven and then moving on? So is it possible that Desmond was still alive and remembered everyone? So we understand that the ending obviously was not in the real world. They probably had already all died and they had to move on together. So the explanation could be that they had all died and they had to move on together. Each one had to move on together because they had been on this island. We all know the island was a weird place, so the island stopped them from moving on. So they all had to move on together. And what had to help them move on was Desmond, because Desmond had the power to be able to be in two different places at the same time without dying, you know, because when he got exposed to that key thing, when he was doing that key thing in the first search, the electromagnetism, whatever, made him be able to do that, to be able to go forward and then backwards. So that would explain that. Another thing that I believe a lot of people would have wondered was, why did the psychic guy that told Claire to go onto the island come out and tell Mr. Echo that he was a scam? Like, isn't that something weird? And why would you tell someone that? Like, Mr. Echo could have just gone to the police and said, you know what, there's this psychic guy that tells our kids lies and is making a huge money off it. Why? Now, I believe the psychic guy knew that Mr. Echo was going to end up on the island anyway, just as Claire. So there was no chance in hell he was gonna go to the police and report him. You know what I mean? And I also think that that psychic guy was the one that took the daughter off the island and then took the daughter to I believe that psychic guy was the one that took the daughter to the island. And somehow the daughter believes that the daughter had actually died, but there was nothing the daughter had never died. Or maybe the daughter was actually killed, and then put in that water, the same water they put Saeed in, bring her back to life, and then the black smoke comes in Yemi's body and talks to her. And that explains it. So it could be that this psychic guy all along had actually been on the island. The psychic guy was on the island. He was working like a CIA agent, living double lives. That could actually explain it, because why would you tell someone that I'm a scam and you're not even worried about it? And because he probably did not want this guy Echo to investigate more about this issue, that how did the daughter come back to life. So he wanted it to drop, because if he investigated more, he probably wouldn't have made it to the plane to end up on the island, because he was needed on the island, and his purpose was to encourage John Locke into pushing himself and doing what he's supposed to do. And then after that, that's why he was killed off. So it's all pieces and parts, but once you think about it, really, it starts to make sense. So let's talk about Ben. Now Ben, let's be fair, Ben was an interesting character at the start. You know, he was this big villain, you know, he was this big guy, but then we find out there's bigger villains than him. You know, John Locke starts to take control and then he starts pushing him around. But obviously Ben was very manipulative. Like, he manipulates anything. Like, I loved how he used to manipulate John Locke into thinking that Jack was against John Locke, so John Locke would start throwing plates, and every time John Locke would actually tell Ben that you're trying to get into my head, I know what you're doing, but then he gets in his head anyway. He lets him get in his head anyway. So that part was very interesting. But Ben, one thing we need to know about Ben was obviously a scam. Ben was definitely a scam. Like, he had never met Jacob. He was never special. He was never chosen. That could also explain the reason why when he got cancer, a tumor, he was going to die. You know, he was going to die from it. And it could be that the reason he got a tumor also was that Jack, the event would make sure that Jack ends up onto that side, and a series of more events would happen to make sure that all of the black smoke gets off the island. Because if Jack hadn't been captured, then John Locke wouldn't have come to see if someone was there, to see these new people and to see the submarine. So John Locke would have never bombed the submarine. So if the submarine was still there, people would have been able to come and off the island, which we all know that the black smoke did not like, because the black smoke because the black smoke had killed everyone from the Dharma Initiative. But if there was a submarine, that means they were still obviously running things. So John Locke was a scam. I mean, Ben was a scam. He was just full of shit. He was just making up stuff. He had no idea. He was never. Remember, he even says he was born on the island because he wants power. He wants people to believe that he knows more about the island than anyone knows. And he also manipulates John Locke into thinking that John Locke has no plans and he knows everything. But really, he had no idea. He had never seen Jacob. He got powers from. He made up stuff and he would tell everyone, and he would go and tell everyone that Jacob told me. You know, he had never seen Jacob. Jacob had never accepted to meet him in person. So basically, the black smoke had never accepted to meet this guy in person, this Ben in person, because he was never chosen. He just happened to be on the island at a young age, and his job that he did was to kill everyone in the Dharma Initiative, which was great, but that did not mean he was chosen. He just did not have the futures to get chosen. So Ben was obviously a scam. He was just full of shit. So another thing is that when Ben's daughter gets killed, we see Ben go into this room and then he summons the black smoke. Now let me tell you something. He never summoned that black smoke. Ben is so smart. Ben does not like to look weak. When Ben went into that place, the closet or whatever, he cried. That's all he probably did. Then for some weird reason, being a coincidence, he comes out and then the black smoke comes out at the same time, which made everyone believe that he had somehow summoned the black smoke, and then everyone somehow thought, well, this guy kind of knows what he's doing, but really he has no idea. He was a very good scout, and we see we get. He was a very good. He was actually a con man, because he conned Sawyer into thinking that rabbit was dead, but really the rabbit wasn't dead, and he conned Sawyer to think that Sawyer had like a pacemaker or something, that if he did something that involved a lot of exercise he would die. That's also conning. So he was also a con man, if you ask me. So there was never anything special about Ben. He was just full of it. He was just chatting shit all the time. Nothing special about him. It's hilarious. The funny part when he goes with John Locke to meet Jacob and the chair is empty, and he tells John Locke that the chair is empty, blah blah blah, something like that. But yeah, so he probably knew that maybe John Locke was chosen, but Ben, he wasn't. So Ben knew that, and he said, let me shoot John Locke and make sure John Locke dies, because if he stays around, he's gonna own all my people. And the reason why he wanted him to kill his father was because he probably wanted to leave him behind. He just wanted him to do something bad and then regret about it, and then, who tells anyone to kill their father? That's why he wanted. The island never told him to kill his father. There's nothing about John. The only thing that helped about John actually killing his father is that John did not kill his father. He got Sawyer to do it. But when Sawyer killed his father, it meant that John had nothing to go back for, because he had this addiction with his dad. We see that in the flashbacks. His dad, he just could not let his dad go, because he had been in a foster, I understand. So him killing his father kind of stopped him from going off the island and knowing that I don't have to go off the island. And then that's when we see him saying stuff like, I don't want to get off the island, and then he bombs the submarine and everything. So that could have been that, Ben, the black smoke had come to Richard, told Richard to tell Ben that kill his dad, because if his dad is still around, he's just gonna be the same annoying person that he's always been. The other thing I would like to talk about is, I like to talk about a lot of things. Now the temple, I feel like the temple, there's not really a big story to it. It was obviously where the others were leaving and stuff, but it felt like one of them things that they just bring into the series because the story's drying up and we have to put something new and put a new setting and stuff. And I feel like it was an empty, especially with a series like Lost, because Lost is always about foreshadowing. There's nothing that they didn't put anything that foreshadowed the temple. The temple did not have to be there. So yeah, the temple just happens to have the same place where the river where you dip your head in, you come back to life. But really, the temple, there was nothing really special about it. And then obviously there's the tunnel that's full of light where you get pushed and then you die. It's also the same tunnel that decides that can destroy the island, something like that. So yeah, I did not get that part. I did not get the tunnel. I did not get why the light was there. I did not get what was the issue. We don't get any info with that. But I don't know. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know anything about the tunnel. I feel like clueless. I still don't know.